Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Yes or No, a weapon review series where I give a clear and concise answer as to what weapons you should be using in Battlefield 4. Today's weapon is the M16A4, one of the burst-only weapons of Battlefield 4. Like its cousin the M4, it has some benefits and detractions related to its burst mechanic. But should you be using the M16A4? Yes or no? Yes, but it depends on your playstyle. Don't get me wrong, the M16A4 has some good things going for it, and it closely competes to the three amigos of the M416, Ace-23, and L85A2. However, those weapons are for the most part going to beat the M16A4 heads up. I think this is one weapon I leave to your discretion after I lay out what the M16A4 has to offer. At 800 rounds per minute, the M16A4 has the ideal rate of fire. It makes for a great combination of killing speed and controllability. There's a caveat here that you'll not always be able to achieve that rate without discipline. Fire too fast, the weapon is going to jam. Fire too slowly, and you're going to be missing out. You can get almost 900 rounds per minute out of the M16A4, but it's going to jam. With that higher fire rate, you usually see weapons have much higher combined recoil totals. Not so with the M16A4. At only 0.28 up, 0.17 left, and 0.28 right, the weapon has some lower than usual recoil. The real kicker, or lack thereof, is that the burst fire on this weapon transfers the first shot recoil multiplier to the third shot instead of the first. That means that the first three bullets of the M16A4 are slightly more accurate than even the AR-160. Land a headshot with that initial volley and your target isn't getting back up. At 650 meters per second, the M16A4 is tied for the second highest bullet velocity of the assault rifles. This pairs nicely with its accuracy to provide a weapon that is capable of landing shots at medium to long range. It's part of the reason why I call the M16A4 a DMR in disguise. At 1.8 seconds, the M16A4 is the fastest reloading assault rifle in the game. In fact, it's the fastest reloading automatic in the game. Many come close, but this weapon is the king of reloading in a hurry. At 2.3 seconds for the empty reload, the M16A4's long reload is actually faster than many rifles' short reload time. Only the secondaries are faster. Other than that, the M16A4 is a pretty middle-of-the-road weapon. The time to kill is just slightly above average for the assault rifles. It's a relatively stable platform with not a whole lot of detractions. But let's talk about those detractions now. Without a doubt, the number one thing that this weapon will fail you on is the jamming. This happens when you fire the weapon too quickly. It's possible to get the M16A4 to fire faster than its advertised 800 rounds per minute rate of fire, but what's going to happen is that you're not going to be able to fire another round for a few moments. When your head's up in CQB, it'll happen more frequently because of panic fire. The on-the-move performance of the M16A4 is relatively poor. Thanks to the unbalanced left-right recoil, burst fire requirements, and standard assault rifle model, the M16A4 does not do well when moving and shooting. Thankfully, this is a detraction that can be mitigated with discipline. The first shot recoil multiplier of the M16A4 is a pretty steep 2.3 times multiplier, though there is some silver lining I've already mentioned. That multiplier isn't actually applied until the third bullet instead of the first, meaning your first three bullets are far easier to control. If you can turn this into a 3-round headshot, the recoil multiplier won't much matter. That's it for the detractions on the M16A4. It's a solid rifle that acts more like a DMR than an assault rifle, so something to consider when choosing the M16A4 over other possibilities is your playstyle. Do you stop and shoot, or are you more likely to be on the move or in CQB? I took a look at some alternatives to the M16A4, the AN-94, M4 Carbine, and the Ace-23. The AN-94 is better in the long game, and the M4 falls off in performance after about 20 meters. But the Ace-23 and M16A4 stay relatively close through the ranges. At long ranges, the M16A4 becomes about a frame better in time to kill. This is where you have to figure out what you're going for. If you want a weapon that is going to be better in CQB, the Ace-23 is probably going to be more reliable as it will not jam. In the long game, you might be better with the AN-94. But because the majority of engagements happen at less than 35 meters, there is this strange middle ground between 10 and 25 meters where the M16A4 is probably going to be your best bet. Particularly if you're adept at aiming for heads, where the accuracy bonus of the M16A4 is really going to help. So let's talk about controlling this weapon. The M16A4 is a limiting weapon. The burst fire is going to mess with your normal control patterns if you're used to automatic weapons, but I consider it a good weapon to learn how to correctly burst fire. First, let's look at the recoil pattern. It's a 0.28 up, 0.17 left, and 0.28 right with a first shot recoil multiplier of 2.3 times. Remember that it's actually a third shot recoil multiplier because of how the burst mechanics work. The more you fire, the more this weapon is going to go up and to the right. To compensate on longer bursts, you can pull down and to the left. You'll have to get into a rhythm here, as uneven firing cadence is going to shake up your aim. Jamming will throw your compensation off even further. An alternative is to fire your burst and let your weapon reset before firing a second burst. This will give you the laser-like accuracy every time with this weapon. This is great for longer ranges, but not always an option closer up. You sacrifice quite a bit of time to kill by letting your weapon reset between shots. The M16A4 is one of those weapons that can do okay in close quarters, but it's not the strength of the weapon. I'd recommend not choosing the M16A4 on CQB maps like Conquest Lockers, Metro, or Pearl Market, and instead going for something a bit more consistent on those maps. TDM is a bit of a toss-up, but I think the M16A4 is better suited to mid-range engagements, so keep that in mind when picking this weapon. Next, the thing you're going to have to do is play to its accuracy, strength, and mid-range. That means sticking to cover and letting enemies expose themselves to fire. The M16A4 is strongest when you can plant your feet, stop moving, and take your shot. In that way, it is quite like a DMR. You can rush enemies with the M16A4, but more often than not, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you find that there is more than one enemy in close proximity. The M16A4 does not have panic power and will jam when you try to overplay it up close. If you find yourself in this situation, having a solid secondary like the G18 or Shorty is going to be probably a bit more reliable for those ranges. It's kind of hard to beat having a pocket AEK with the G18. Switching between a powerful CQB secondary and the better suited to mid-range M16A4 is actually a pretty solid strategy if you can't get the tempo of the M16A4 down in close quarters. The M16A4 is fairly compatible with a lot of attachments. Its first shot recoil multiplier is not to be trifled with at 2.3 times, the burst mechanics make it less reliable in close quarters, and the on-the-move capability is somewhat lacking. I've seen stubby grips, angled grips, and vertical grips be modestly successful on the M16A4. When looking at the top M16A4 users on BF4stats.com, I found that they generally preferred an RDS matched with the heavy barrel and the angled or stubby grips. I had two setups that were slightly varied. For the sight, I prefer the HD33. I tried a number of different optics, and while I think that they are all pretty suitable, I like the idea of having a slightly higher magnification to attempt to land those headshots. However, because of the high recoil multiplier in the M16A4, I think anything beyond 1x is going to produce really lackluster results. If you prefer an RDS over the hollows, I don't think you'll be missing out. My accessory is pretty standard at this point, the laser sight. I ran with green, I ran with red. Whichever you prefer, though I did note that most M16A4 players tended to run without a laser. If you're disciplined enough to turn it off when you're not in close quarters, the laser is just fine. Otherwise, leave it off and pull up your secondary to go hunting in CQB. Now for the grip and barrels, I had two preferred setups. I'll talk about the strengths of both. Let's start with the more accurate of the two that plays to the M16A4's strength. The first combination is the heavy barrel and stubby grip. The heavy barrel halves the starting spread and gives slightly better on-the-move fire. I think this is a no-brainer for the M16A4 in particular. Making those first three shots as accurate as possible is a major power multiplying effect for the M16A4. Land those three shots on a head and it's lights out at any range. Matching this to the stubby grip just makes sense as the grip improves your aimed accuracy and decreases the spread increase per shot, again turning those first three bullets into impressive lasers. My second combination is a bit more forgiving of missed shots. This combination is the angled grip and suppressor. For whatever reason, I found that enemies seem to be particularly drawn to the sound of my 5.56mm burst fire. In those situations, I ended up throwing on the suppressor. This greatly reduces the effective range of the M16A4, but I found that when enemies were pressing me hard, it didn't much matter that I lost a good amount of bullet velocity. I made up for it in survivability. You could keep on the stubby grip if you like, but while learning the M16A4, I found the angle grip to be slightly more appealing. It reduces the effect of the shot multiplier, making follow-up rounds slightly easier to keep on target. Once you get more accustomed to the M16A4, I definitely recommend running with the first of these two setups. The M16A4 is definitely a unique weapon. It's a weapon I advise people try if they want to get into the habit of burst firing weapons. It's not particularly well suited to undisciplined play and will punish over-aggressive or spammy players. And I don't think it's a top-tier weapon when the difference between players comes down to time to kill. But it is still a yes. If you find yourself enjoying burst fire weapons and want to try something a bit more suited to the long-range game, give the AN-94 a try. It's got a very unique two-burst pattern that can provide some of the highest accuracy fire in the game, particularly for players adept at landing headshots. If you need something reliable in every situation, you can't go wrong with the M416. A personal favorite of mine, the M416 combines accuracy, lethality, and reliability into a very average package. It does everything pretty much average. That's it for this episode of Yes or No. If there's something you think I missed, or if you have a particularly different take on the M16A4, please let me know in the comments below. If there's a weapon you'd like to see reviewed on this series, leave a comment indicating which weapon. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.